The moment I knew things would never be the same didn't come with a bang or a dramatic scene. It wasn't a confrontation or a fight. It wasn't even a warning sign. It came quietly, in the most unexpected way. In a single, innocent conversation. It was a Sunday morning, a cold one. The kind where you just want to curl up under a blanket with a hot cup of coffee. I was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through my phone, lost in my thoughts. Sophie, my wife, had been out the night before again. She'd been working late all week, and I'd gotten used to her coming home after midnight, smelling like perfume and alcohol, but never saying much about it. I had my suspicions, sure. The late nights, the long hours. But I was the type of guy who didn't want to ask too many questions. I mean, she had her own life, right? She wasn't some kind of prisoner. But today was different. Today, I had something on my mind that I couldn't shake. I was reading through some emails when Sophie walked in, still wearing the clothes from last night. Her hair was messy, her makeup smudged, but she still had that same bright smile she always wore. The kind of smile that made everything seem okay. But I didn't trust it anymore. I couldn't. "Morning," she said, dropping her keys on the counter and stretching. I barely looked up from my phone. "Morning." For a moment, there was silence. I could feel it, the tension building up between us. She moved around the kitchen, making coffee, pretending like everything was normal. But I knew it wasn't. "So," I said, trying to sound casual, "who were you with last night?" She froze. The coffee mug was halfway to her lips, and for a moment, her hand trembled. I caught it. She quickly set the mug down and turned to face me. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you've been out a lot recently," I said, not looking up from my phone. "Late nights. Different places. I just want to know who you're spending your time with." There was a pause, just long enough for me to feel like I had crossed some invisible line. She let out a small, forced laugh. "Elliott, you're being paranoid. It's just work and some friends. You know, the usual." I nodded, but I didn't buy it. Something wasn't right. I could see it in her eyes, the way she avoided my gaze, the way she kept shifting her weight from one foot to the other. She was hiding something. I could feel it in my bones. "You're sure?" I pressed, still not looking at her. "Because it's been happening a lot lately, and I don't want to ignore it." Sophie's expression shifted then, something flashing in her eyes. "It's nothing, Elliott. Really, I'm just tired. I've been working hard lately. You know how it is." But I didn't know how it was. I didn't know what she was talking about anymore. We'd once shared everything, but now I felt like she was slipping away, leaving me on the outside. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how little I actually knew about her life these days. "I'm just asking," I said quietly, finally looking up from my phone. "Because if there's something going on, I'd rather hear it from you than find out some other way." She shook her head quickly, almost too quickly. "There's nothing going on. You've got nothing to worry about." But the way she said it didn't make me feel any better. It made my stomach tighten. There was something about her voice, the way she spoke, that didn't match the words she was saying. It was as if she was trying to convince herself more than me. I wanted to push further, to demand the truth. But something stopped me. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was doubt. The thought of confronting her, of tearing apart the life we had built, felt unbearable. I didn't know if I could handle what I might find. Instead, I decided to let it go, for the moment. I went back to scrolling through my phone, pretending like nothing had happened. But in the back of my mind, the question lingered. What was she hiding? That night, I decided to do something I'd never done before. I would wait up for her. It was nearly midnight when I heard the front door creak open. I had been sitting in the dark, waiting for this exact moment. Sophie walked in quietly, not wanting to wake me, but I was already wide awake. She still hadn't noticed I was sitting there in the dark. I stood up, and for the first time in a long time, I looked at her with suspicion. She froze when she saw me standing there. She wasn't expecting this. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice steady, but my heart was racing. Sophie's face faltered. She didn't speak right away. "I was out with some colleagues," she said, her words quick, too quick. "You know how it is. We had some drinks after work." I nodded, trying to read her. "So who's Ryan?" The name slipped out before I could think about it. I had seen the text earlier that day. Her phone had buzzed while I was sitting at the table, and I had glanced at the screen without meaning to. It was from someone named Ryan. I had thought nothing of it at first, but then I remembered the late nights, the secretive behavior. And now this. Her face drained of color, her mouth opening and closing as she tried to find the right words. "Ryan's just a colleague," she stammered. Just a colleague? I repeated, my voice hardening. Then why is he texting you late at night? And why don't you ever mention him? Sophie took a step back, her eyes wide with something I couldn't quite place. Elliott, I swear, it's nothing. You're reading too much into this. I didn't know what to believe anymore. The doubts I had pushed away for months were all coming to the surface now. I could feel the tension between us thickening, suffocating. Something had changed, and I could no longer pretend that everything was fine. Sophie's eyes darted nervously around the room, and that's when I realized I had never felt so alone with her in my life. After Sophie's response, I could see that she was becoming more uncomfortable with every passing second. Her eyes darted from me to the door and back again, like she was trying to come up with a plausible excuse, a way out. But no words came, just the awkward silence between us, thick and suffocating. I stood there, my mind racing, feeling something deep inside shift. It wasn't just the text messages or the late nights. It was the way Sophie was reacting. She was hiding something, and the more she tried to cover it up, the more certain I became. It wasn't just work anymore. Who is Ryan? I asked again, this time with a little more force, trying to break through her nervous facade. Sophie hesitated, her lips pressed together as if she was weighing whether to tell the truth or continue with the lie. Finally, she spoke, but her voice lacked the conviction it once had. He's just a friend from work. We've known each other for a while. I wasn't sure what made me more uneasy, the fact that she couldn't look me in the eye while saying that, or the fact that it felt like she was trying to convince herself as much as she was trying to convince me. A friend? I repeated, crossing my arms. Is that all? You've never mentioned him before. Not once. Sophie's face turned pale, and I could see the nerves kicking in. I don't talk about everyone at work, Elliott. Why is this such a big deal? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I let the question hang in the air, heavy and unresolved. Something was wrong. I had seen the way she reacted to the name, Ryan. I had felt the sudden tension in the room. Without saying another word, I turned and walked over to the kitchen counter, grabbing her phone, which she had left carelessly on the table. I didn't know what I was looking for exactly, but something told me there was more to this story than she was letting on. Sophie's eyes widened as I picked up the phone. Elliott, don't. But it was too late. My thumb was already swiping through her messages, the phone unlocking easily. I couldn't stop myself. I needed to know what she was hiding. The first few messages were nothing unusual, small talk, plans for work events, the usual routine. But as I scrolled down, I saw Ryan's name appear again and again, always late at night. Always with some cryptic comment or an inside joke that I wasn't part of. My stomach turned as I read through the threads, each message digging a deeper hole in my chest. And then I found it. I'll be there soon. Don't tell Elliott. I'll make sure you're not alone tonight. My blood ran cold. Those words. That sentence. It was like the floor beneath me had just disappeared. Sophie had been hiding something from me. Not just a late-night drink or a casual chat, but something deeper. Something that wasn't meant for my eyes. I could feel my hands trembling as I put the phone back on the counter. Sophie was standing in the doorway now, watching me, her face pale, her eyes pleading. But it was too late. I knew what I had read. I knew what it meant. You lied to me, Sophie, I said, my voice almost a whisper. Why would you need to hide something like that? Her lips parted, but she couldn't answer. Her gaze dropped to the floor, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of guilt in her eyes. I didn't mean for you to find out like this, she said quietly. It's just complicated. I wasn't ready to hear her excuses. Complicated, I repeated, taking a step closer to her. What's so complicated about being honest with your husband? Why couldn't you just tell me the truth? She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. I never meant for it to go this far. It just happened. Ryan and I. You and Ryan. I interrupted, my anger rising. What is this, Sophie? What are you doing behind my back? Sophie closed her eyes, a tear escaping down her cheek. I'm so sorry, Elliott. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't know what to do. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I wasn't sure what I was feeling anymore. Betrayal, hurt, rage. It all mixed together, making it hard to think clearly. But one thing was certain. I couldn't let this go. I think I need some time to think, I said, my voice low. I turned away, unable to look at her anymore. Don't contact him. Don't contact anyone. I need space. Sophie nodded silently, wiping her tears away. I walked out of the kitchen, my mind spinning with the discovery I had just made. As I walked down the hallway, I felt a knot in my stomach tighten. I had trusted her. I had trusted Sophie with everything. And now, everything felt like a lie. The worst part? I still didn't know the full truth. And I wasn't sure I was ready to face it. I spent the rest of that night in a blur, pacing the apartment in a mix of frustration and disbelief. I couldn't shake the images of the text messages I had seen, the promises made, the secrets whispered in the dead of night. I had always prided myself on being patient, on trusting Sophie, but now that trust felt like it was crumbling before me. I didn't know who I was more angry with, her, for lying, or myself, for letting it get this far. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the words on her phone again, flashing in my mind like a neon sign. Don't tell Elliott. It haunted me. I was supposed to be the one she confided in, the one she trusted above all else. And yet, here I was, shattered and unsure. The clock ticked loudly in the background, and every minute that passed felt like a lifetime. Sophie was in the bedroom, and for the first time in years, there was a wall between us, an invisible divide that neither of us could cross. I knew she was awake too, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, probably regretting what had happened, but she hadn't come to talk to me. She hadn't tried to explain herself. I didn't know if I wanted to hear her excuses anyway. The next morning, everything felt different. It was like the world had shifted on its axis overnight, and nothing was where it was supposed to be. I got up early, too early, to avoid another awkward conversation, but there was no avoiding it. Sophie was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. She didn't look at me when I walked in. Her face was pale, like she hadn't slept either. Elliott, she started, her voice shaking. We need to talk. I didn't say anything. I just sat across from her, my arms crossed, waiting. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. Apology? Explanation? A good reason for what I had seen? I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I knew whatever came next would determine everything. Whether we moved forward or I walked away. She cleared her throat, taking a deep breath. What you saw last night. I didn't want you to find out like that. Then why didn't you just tell me the truth, Sophie? I asked, my voice tight. Why hide it? Why text him at all? Sophie winced at my words. I was trying to protect you, she said quietly, almost as if she believed it. I didn't want to hurt you. By lying to me? I replied, my anger rising despite myself. I don't understand, Sophie. You were hiding something huge, and I don't know how to process it. How long has this been going on? She shifted in her seat, her eyes avoiding mine. It wasn't like that at first. Ryan. He's just a friend from work, but things got complicated. I started spending more time with him because you weren't around as much. You were always working late, always distracted. And I was feeling alone. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So that's it. You felt alone. Is that why you kept this from me? You knew what you were doing, Sophie. Don't try to justify it. She shook her head, her voice breaking. I never meant for it to get this far. I swear. It was just a few texts at first, then a few drinks after work. But then, it got out of hand. I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know how to tell you. You should have told me the moment you felt something wasn't right, I said coldly, standing up from the table. I needed space, but it wasn't just physical distance. I needed a mental break from the confusion that was consuming me. I'm so sorry, Elliott, she whispered, and I could hear the desperation in her voice. I messed up. I never wanted to hurt you. I love you. I closed my eyes, trying to hold back the wave of emotion threatening to overwhelm me. You don't love me, Sophie. You love the idea of me, but not the reality. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. I wanted to walk away. I wanted to end this, but a part of me held back, afraid of the void it would leave behind. How could we fix something this broken? Could we fix it? The rest of the day passed in a blur. I didn't know where to go or what to do. I couldn't think straight. I needed answers, more than she could give me in that moment. It wasn't just about her betrayal. It was about everything I thought I knew slipping through my fingers. Later that evening, as I sat in the living room, staring at the empty space between us, I realized just how much I had been ignoring over the past few months. The late nights, the distance, the empty conversations. All those signs I had brushed aside, convinced that everything was fine. But now, with everything laid bare, I could see how much I had missed. Sophie came into the living room after a while, standing in the doorway, unsure of whether to approach me or not. I didn't look up at her. I couldn't. I was too angry, too hurt to face her just yet. You don't have to stay, I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. If you want to be with him, go. But don't lie to me again. Sophie didn't answer. She just stood there, tears silently falling down her face. For a brief moment, I thought she might leave. But instead, she took a few tentative steps toward me, kneeling at my feet. I don't want to lose you, Elliott. Please don't do this. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I don't know if I can keep going, Sophie. I don't know if I can forgive you for this. The silence stretched on, thick and heavy, until it felt like neither of us could breathe. The air felt suffocating, like the space between Sophie and I had become an impenetrable wall. I wanted to yell, to scream at her, but nothing came out. Instead, I sat there, in silence, waiting for the next words to break through the tension. She was still kneeling in front of me, her eyes desperate, searching for something in my face, something that might make everything okay. But I couldn't give her that. Not after what I had seen, not after the lies. I don't know if I can trust you again, Sophie. I finally muttered, barely above a whisper. The words left my mouth, and I felt the weight of them settle over me like a thick fog. She had always been the one I trusted the most, but now? Now it was like the ground had been ripped from beneath me. Sophie's face crumpled as if my words had physically hurt her. I know I messed up. I know I've ruined everything. But I swear, I never wanted this to happen. I was lonely, and when Ryan... Enough! I interrupted, cutting her off. I don't want to hear about Ryan. I want to understand how you could do this to me. How you could look me in the eye every day and still. I didn't want to hurt you, she said, her voice breaking. But I couldn't stop myself. It started off so small, just a text here and there. But then, I don't know. It just grew. I felt like I was invisible. And he saw me. He listened to me. And I thought, maybe I could feel alive again. Her words were like daggers, each one digging deeper into my heart. I had always believed that communication was the foundation of any relationship. But somewhere along the way, we had stopped communicating. We had stopped really seeing each other. I stood up abruptly, walking toward the window, needing distance, needing air. So that's it. You felt invisible? And that's enough to throw everything away? To destroy what we had? Sophie's footsteps followed behind me, but she didn't touch me. She didn't try to comfort me. She just stood there, waiting for me to process it all. But I couldn't. How long has this been going on, Sophie? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, but the pain in it was impossible to hide. How long have you been seeing him? Just a few months, she said, her voice so small it almost felt like an admission of defeat. But Elliott, it was never supposed to be like this. I never meant for it to go this far. A few months. Just a few months. That was the amount of time it had taken for my entire world to unravel. For her to betray me. For her to break every promise we had made. I turned around slowly, meeting her eyes for the first time since the confrontation started. Her face was a mask of guilt, her lips trembling as if she were about to beg for my forgiveness. But I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. I don't know what to do, I admitted, finally breaking the silence that had hung between us. I don't know if I can forgive you, Sophie. You've shattered everything I believed in, and I don't know how to pick up the pieces. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came out. She simply stood there, her shoulders sagging under the weight of everything that had been said. We were both drowning in the silence, each of us too afraid to take the first step forward. I had been in relationships before, but this was different. This was betrayal in its purest form, and I didn't know how to fix it. I knew I couldn't just let it go. I couldn't pretend like nothing had happened. But part of me still wanted to hold on to her, to somehow fix what had been broken. The other part of me wanted to run, to escape the situation altogether. But what choice did I have? If I stayed, I had to know if I could trust her again. If I left, I had to live with the fact that I was walking away from someone I once loved deeply. I think we both need time, I said, the words coming out heavier than I intended. I can't make any decisions right now, Sophie. I need to think. She nodded, looking like she had expected this. There was no fight left in her, no argument to defend herself. I left the room without another word, retreating to the solitude of the bedroom. I needed space, but not just physical space. I needed clarity. I needed to understand what had happened, what Sophie had done, and what I was willing to accept. The night stretched on, and the weight of the situation hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thoughts swirling in my mind. I kept coming back to one question. Why? Why did Sophie do this? Was it just about feeling invisible? Or was there something deeper that I had missed? The following days felt like a blur, each one dragging by with a heavy, suffocating silence hanging over the house. I tried to go about my day, to work, to eat, to pretend everything was normal, but the truth was always there, lurking just beneath the surface. Sophie and I avoided eye contact whenever we crossed paths, like strangers in our own home. We had become masters of pretending, but I knew it couldn't last forever. It was a Friday evening when I decided I couldn't keep going like this. I had spent the whole week in a fog, barely sleeping, my mind running in circles. I needed to know the full truth, even if it hurt. I couldn't keep living in the unknown, constantly second-guessing everything Sophie had told me. I had to confront it, whatever it was. I waited until Sophie came home that night. It was nearly 9 p.m., and I had spent the last few hours pacing the living room, trying to steady my nerves. When she walked through the door, she didn't look at me right away. Her eyes were glued to the floor, as if she knew what was coming. I stood up as soon as I heard her footsteps. "Sophie," I said, my voice steady but firm, "we need to talk." She paused in the doorway, her body tense. "Elliott, please. I don't know what else I can say. I already told you everything." I shook my head, walking toward her. "No, you haven't. You haven't told me everything, and I need to know. I can't keep guessing. I can't keep wondering if there's more you're hiding from me." Her face softened, and I saw the hurt flash in her eyes. She opened her mouth to speak, but then stopped herself, as if trying to choose her words carefully. Finally, she let out a long, slow breath and nodded. "All right," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll tell you, but you might not like it." We sat down on the couch, and for the first time in days, I looked at her directly. The woman I had married, the person I had trusted without question, was sitting across from me, and yet everything felt wrong. "I never meant for things to get out of hand," she started, her eyes downcast. "I was lonely, yes, but it wasn't just about Ryan. It was about something deeper, something I couldn't talk to you about. You were so consumed with work, and I felt like I was invisible. I felt like I was losing myself. And when Ryan started paying attention to me, she paused, her voice cracking slightly. I didn't know how to stop. I could feel my heart sinking with each word. I wasn't sure what was worse, the betrayal or the fact that she had been carrying this alone, thinking it was something she couldn't share with me. "And when did you decide that this was okay?" I asked, my voice low, barely controlled. "When did you think it was acceptable to lie to me, to betray me?" "I never thought it was okay," she whispered. I didn't know how to fix it. And when I saw how far I'd gone, I couldn't stop. I didn't want to lose you, but I was too afraid of facing you, too afraid of how you'd react." I leaned back, trying to process everything she had just said. Part of me wanted to feel sympathy for her. After all, I knew how painful loneliness could be. But another part of me was filled with anger. Anger at the choices she had made, at how she had shut me out without ever telling me what was really going on. So, it was about Ryan, but it was also about something deeper? I asked, my voice barely audible now. "About feeling invisible? That's the excuse you're going with?" Sophie's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't want to hurt you, Elliott. I didn't want this to destroy us. I never wanted to be this person. But I let it happen. I let myself get lost in something that wasn't real." I was quiet for a long time. My mind was spinning with everything she had confessed. Ryan wasn't just a guy she was texting. He was a catalyst, a symbol of something she was missing in her life, something I had failed to notice. But it still didn't make sense to me. Why hadn't she come to me first? Why hadn't she talked to me when she started feeling like this? "I don't know if I can forgive you, Sophie," I said finally, the words tasting bitter as they left my mouth. "I don't know if I can get past this. You've crossed a line, and I don't know how to come back from that." Sophie's shoulders trembled as she wiped away the tears. "I understand," she said, her voice raw with emotion. "But please, don't give up on us. I love you. I made a terrible mistake, and I will do whatever it takes to fix it. I can't lose you." I looked at her, at the woman I had once thought I knew so well. Part of me wanted to believe her, to give her the benefit of the doubt. But the other part of me, the rational part, knew that things weren't so simple. The trust had been broken, and it was going to take more than words to fix it. I don't know if I can do that, Sophie, I said quietly, the weight of my own uncertainty pressing down on me. I don't know if I can just forget this. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. Her face crumpled in pain, but she didn't argue. She didn't try to convince me with empty promises. She just sat there, waiting, letting me process everything in my own time. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had control again. I didn't have the answers, but I could choose what came next. And that, in itself, was a small victory. The days after that conversation were filled with a quiet tension. Sophie and I barely spoke. We passed each other in the halls, exchanged small, awkward pleasantries, but there was no warmth in our interactions. The house, once filled with laughter and light, now felt empty, a shell of what it used to be. I kept replaying everything in my head. The lies, the betrayal, the way Sophie had shut me out when I had been right there, ready to listen. I couldn't understand it, couldn't wrap my mind around how it had gotten so far. Every time I tried to move past it, the doubt crept back in, like a shadow, always lurking, never quite leaving. Sophie tried to reach out, of course. She would sit next to me on the couch in the evenings, trying to engage in conversation, but it never worked. I couldn't look at her without seeing the secret she had kept from me. I couldn't hear her voice without hearing the words of her confession echoing in my mind. I was lonely, and I couldn't stop myself. It was clear to me now, Sophie was lost. I didn't know if it was the affair with Ryan that had pushed her down this path, or if it had been a slow unraveling of something deeper. But whatever it was, I wasn't sure I could be the one to fix it. I wasn't sure I wanted to be. One evening, about a week after our heart-wrenching conversation, Sophie came to me with an idea. Elliott, she started, her voice tentative. I think we should take some time apart. The words hit me like a cold slap. Time apart. I had been bracing myself for a breakup, but hearing her say it out loud felt like the last nail in the coffin. She was giving up. I didn't know how to react. Part of me had been expecting this, waiting for her to suggest it, but another part of me wanted to argue, to beg her to stay and fight for us. I had loved her so deeply, and I wasn't ready to let go. But was I really fighting for us? Or was I just holding on to the ghost of the woman I once knew? I don't think I can do this anymore, Sophie, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I don't think I can keep pretending that everything's fine when it's not. She nodded, her face pale and unreadable. I don't want to give up either, but I think we need space to figure out who we are, without all the anger, without the lies. It was the first time in days I had seen any sort of clarity in her eyes. She wasn't avoiding the issue anymore. She was facing it head-on. But in doing so, she was giving me a choice, to stay in the limbo of what we had, or to move forward without her. I need to know what you want, Sophie, I said quietly, the weight of my words heavy in the air. Do you want to work this out? Or do you just want to walk away and pretend like nothing happened? Sophie looked at me for a long moment, her eyes searching my face as though she was trying to find the answer there. But I didn't have one. I didn't know what I wanted anymore. I don't want to walk away, she said finally, tears welling up again. I don't. But I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if you can ever forgive me. Her vulnerability, her raw honesty, made my chest ache. But at the same time, it made me realize just how much I had lost. Trust, security, that feeling of safety I once had when I was with her, it was all gone. I don't know if I can forgive you either, I whispered. The words felt like a death sentence, not just for her, but for everything we had built together. We sat there, neither of us moving, both of us too afraid to speak the truth that was hanging in the air between us. The truth that no matter how much we loved each other, we were no longer the same people we had been when we first met. And that was the hardest pill to swallow. The days that followed were the quietest we had shared in weeks, but the silence was different now. It wasn't the peaceful kind we used to enjoy, the kind of silence where we would sit together, comfortable in each other's presence. Now, it felt like a looming storm, the kind you know is coming, but you don't know when or how bad it will be. Sophie and I had agreed to the time apart, but the truth was, neither of us really knew what that meant. Were we still together? Were we done? Or were we just delaying the inevitable? I couldn't answer any of those questions, and neither could she. I spent most of my time at work, burying myself in distractions. Every once in a while, my phone would buzz with a message from her, a simple text. How are you? Or are we okay? But each time I read it, my stomach tightened. We weren't okay. We hadn't been okay for a long time. Sophie, it seemed, had been avoiding any deep conversation, as if she were waiting for me to make the first move. But every time I thought about reaching out, I felt this deep, gnawing uncertainty. What would I even say? Could I look her in the eye and tell her that I still loved her? Could I forgive the lies, the betrayal? One afternoon, a week into our time apart, Sophie called me. Her voice was shaky when she spoke, and there was something in her tone that made my heart skip. "Elliott, I need to see you. I can't keep doing this," she said, her words coming fast, as if she couldn't breathe properly. "I'm not sure where we stand anymore, and I can't keep pretending that I don't care." I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose. I hadn't been expecting this. I hadn't been expecting her to confront the situation head-on. I thought maybe we'd just continue living in this limbo, stuck between what was and what could have been. But here she was, taking the first step, asking the hard question. "Where are you?" I asked, my voice quiet. "Can you meet me at the park? The one near our old place?" I hesitated, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. Meeting her face to face was the last thing I wanted to do. It would open up all the raw wounds we had been trying to ignore. But I knew, deep down, that this was the moment. If we were going to have any chance of moving forward, whether together or apart, it had to happen now. I arrived at the park 10 minutes later, my hands tied on the steering wheel. The place was empty, save for a few people walking their dogs. The sun was starting to dip behind the trees, casting long shadows over the worn path. I spotted Sophie sitting on a bench by the lake, her gaze lost in the rippling water. When she saw me approaching, she stood up, her face pale, her eyes red from what I assumed were unshed tears. But she didn't speak at first. Instead, she looked at me, like she was trying to find some glimmer of the person she used to know. I could see the weight of guilt in her eyes, the same guilt that had been hanging over her since that first night I found the texts. "I didn't want it to come to this," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. "I didn't want to hurt you, Elliott. I swear, I never meant for any of this to happen. I wasn't thinking straight. I wasn't thinking about us when it all started. I was thinking about myself." Her words hit me harder than I expected. It was as if the veil had lifted, and for the first time, I could see the depth of her regret. "I know what you're going to say," she continued, her eyes pleading now. "That I've ruined everything. And you're right. I have. But I'm so sorry for what I did to you. I was selfish. I didn't think about the consequences." I swallowed hard, the weight of her apologies sinking into me. I had always known she was sorry, but hearing it out loud, hearing her take responsibility for what she had done, was a shock to my system. The truth of it made everything so much more real. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my thoughts. "Sophie, this isn't just about the affair. It's not just about Ryan. It's about everything. It's about how you shut me out, how you stopped communicating with me, how I didn't even see it happening until it was too late." Her face twisted with sorrow. I know I pushed you away, and I wish I could take all of it back, but I can't. All I can do is tell you how much I regret it, how much I want to fix this." We stood there in silence for a moment, the weight of everything hanging between us. I didn't know how to respond. There were so many things I still needed answers to, things I wasn't sure I would ever get. But there was one question I knew I had to ask, one question that would decide everything. "Sophie," I said, my voice low, "what do you want? What do you want from me? From us?" She looked at me, her gaze filled with fear and hope, and for the first time, I saw the truth in her eyes. She wasn't just apologizing for the affair. She was apologizing for the lost connection, the years of silence that had driven us apart. But was it enough? "I want to try," she said finally. "I know it's going to be hard. I know I've broken your trust. But I'm asking you to give me another chance, to give us another chance." I stood there, feeling the weight of her words press against me. I wanted to believe in her. I wanted to believe that things could be fixed. But deep down, I knew it wasn't going to be easy. We weren't the same people anymore. I wasn't the same person anymore. "I don't know if I can," I whispered, the words coming out slower than I intended. "I don't know if I can trust you again. And that's something I don't know how to fix." She looked down, her shoulders slumping with the weight of my response. But then, she took a step closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll wait for you. Whatever you decide, I'll be here. I just need you to know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes." And with that, I realized something I hadn't fully admitted to myself until now. No matter what happened, Sophie and I were both at a crossroads. We couldn't go back to who we were before, but maybe, just maybe, we could figure out what came next. The days after our conversation at the park were still filled with uncertainty, but something had shifted between Sophie and me. It wasn't a miracle, and it wasn't a sudden, grand gesture that solved everything. But the distance between us, the wall that had been built out of lies and silence, was beginning to crack. We took things slower than I had ever imagined we could. We started talking again, really talking, about everything. About the things we had ignored, the things that had built up over time, and the things we had been too afraid to say. Sophie was patient with me, never rushing, never pushing for an answer she wanted to hear. She just listened. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like she was truly there, present, trying to rebuild the trust we had lost. It wasn't easy. There were days when I wanted to pull away, when the memories of the betrayal flooded back and made me question everything. But then there were the small moments, the gentle smiles, the shared jokes, the quiet evenings where we sat next to each other, not needing to fill the silence. Sophie proved to me, day by day, that she was committed to making things right. She didn't expect forgiveness overnight, but she showed up. She listened when I spoke, and she was honest about her own feelings. She didn't shy away from the hard conversations, and slowly, we started to find our way back to each other. We started doing little things again, things we had once enjoyed together. A simple walk in the park, cooking dinner side by side, even sitting in silence, but knowing we weren't alone. It was these small, simple moments that made me believe it could work. That maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild what we had lost. It took time, and it wasn't perfect. We still had moments of doubt, times when the weight of the past would sneak up on us. But instead of running from it, we faced it together. We learned that love isn't always about perfection. It's about choosing each other, even when it's hard. One evening, months later, after a quiet dinner, I looked at Sophie, really looked at her, and for the first time in a long while, I felt peace. "I'm not sure where this is going," I said, my voice calm, but my heart steady. "But I know I want to try. I want to keep trying with you." She smiled, a soft, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "I'm with you, Elliott, every step of the way." And in that moment, I realized that the road ahead wouldn't be without its challenges, but it was a road worth walking, together. We weren't perfect, and neither was our love. But it was real, and it was ours. And sometimes, that's enough. We didn't have all the answers, but we were finally starting to find our way back. And for the first time in months, I felt hope, a real, tangible hope, that maybe, just maybe, we could heal, rebuild, and move forward. Together.